Okay,
We're back.
welcome to the LaurEm podcast.
Welcome.
Today's topic, pose of the day, is crow pose and variations.
And variation.
And variations.
Yes. So, how do we get into it? How do we start?
Well, there's a couple ways you can get into crow. What's your favorite?
What is my favorite? I think I guess I usually, if I'm just left to my own devices, kind of like a rocked forward, a narrow rocked forward malasana.
Yeah.
So you start from like your yogi squat, but then walk everything in a little bit more. And then I guess I just like to tip forward and go from there. Because another option is, from more lifted, but I think because my torso is so long and my legs, I can't.
They can't get to your arms.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
It's more that my legs are shorter, I guess.
So I have the opposite situation, and I like coming from a malasana. That works for me too. However, I think the way I first learned when I was newer was from chair. I got up on the toes because look, my thigh bone, and I hold this tension. My thigh bone's so long that this gets my hips higher, which helps get up. I have to get up on top of myself a little more, because my thigh bone's almost longer than my torso. So again, it's very easy for me to get my knees there from that position. Whereas you had to you've got to fit your torso, round your torso, I think a lot more than I do. Whereas I'm kind of
it's like a very compacted.
Yeah, and you're having to almost make this fit to here, whereas I'm the opposite. It's in the way. My leg is a little long, and there's a lot of leg there.
So if you do it, so anyway, all of that to say, as we're discovering things as well, how you like to get into crow and how you may best enter crow may be different.
Try it out, from a squat and then try from chair, but creating a little elbow shelf. And I recently had the question, do I have to have my knees really high? Is it always better to have the knees high on the triceps? I would say no, not necessarily, because for some people, depending on your proportions, if you load it too high, your weight is so heavy. If you get really high to start, it may be hard for you to find balance. It's more about shifting your mass forward, and if it's a little too top heavy, the forward part can get kind of lost. And so sometimes if you have enough arm bone, you can be back on your tricep,
on the meat of the tricep.
Yeah.
So even when you bend your knee, there's this, or your elbow, there's a flat part
right
at
on
the
the
back.
end.
Yeah, which you can feel if you go like this or with your knee, which is really important for Ekapada Bakasana, one-legged crow, because see how she's got her kneecap.
It's right impromptu.
But it finds just that
it looks
flat little back part.
It looks like you're just gonna slide off, but it's actually very stable.
A little shelf.
Yeah. So for some people, in their regular crow, if you're having difficulty getting into it and you've tried it up high, over time, I think that's just a lot of compression that some people don't have starting out. You don't need it to be able to do crow. What you need is to be able to put your knees somewhere and then get far enough forward so that your mass will lift.
Yeah, and what we see a lot too is if people are just starting to get into it, but they're looking straight down here, it's you can probably tell now
barely
from
get off the
watching
ground.
this, but
when I say gaze to the front of your mat, what happens?
This way, and then you're shifting out way more.
Yeah, and she's able to distribute her weight more evenly instead of just a dive bomb down towards the floor.
And really gripping a lot with your fingertips. I like to say the heels of your hands are like your gas pedals and your fingertips are like your brakes. So kind of finding that play between the two. Don't be surprised if you get little bruises on the back of your arms.
Until you learn to kind of lift the weight a little bit from your hips and your core. It's pretty heavy, And also if you get it on kind of a meaty portion instead of a bony portion, or certain places where I feel like it just bruises more easily.
Yeah.
So another, if you are wanting to work towards, for example, crow to tripod, a great little trick that I learned, because the scariest part for most people is like putting the head down. So let's say I'm looking forward for my crow pose. I want to go to tripod. I'm going to widen my knees a little bit to go a little lower. This isn't required, but it helps you lower your center of gravity, and then start to bring my chin in towards my chest, and boop, there is a point where I'm like, oh, where's the floor? But the more that you play with it, you'll just know that the floor is there and you'll not be so scared. A good assist can also help you get more confident. Yeah, good.
Squeeze your legs together.
Squeeze. Good.
And then she can come back down the same way she went up.
Pull the knees in.
And
I can widen a little bit.
Yep.
And then grip, 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 fingertips.
Yeah.
And heel of the hand, I'm in a little bit wider crow because I kind of made it a little easier on the way down. But that's really good core work. Controlling the lower.
Yeah.
And even if you can't lift back to crow, just working little tucks.
Yeah.
Coming up and down is great for other inversions too, and for your crow.
Yeah. And I like to think about too, when I'm coming down from tripod, if I'm trying to come back into crow, there's that little point for me, and maybe we'll discover something about my torso length here, but like, okay, I get my knees down. The first thing I have to do is start to drop my hips in order to lift my head up.
Well, and you've got a longer length, you're a little more spread out, so it's very important to shift the weight back, and that's a good cue to give. The weight has to go, hips have to lower, because if your hips stay up really high, where's the head gonna go? Nowhere. So what if you have wrist issues, but you still want to work like a crow shape, or let's say you're really afraid of falling out of crow,
which you might.
Yeah,
and that's
happens.
okay.
Happens.
Baby crow.
Baby
crow.
crow. Yeah, I love baby crow.
I do too. It's very compressed for me.
I bet.
So, baby crow is forearms down, and it doesn't really look like you're doing much because you're so little in there, but it can be a lot of work.
It's very low to the ground. It's really the forward rock is. She's got her knees, and she's literally reaching her nose forward. To get her weight, into that position. It's just a tiny little shape. Let's see what mine looks like. I have a shorter arm, shorter torso, but a long
legs.
thigh.
Yeah.
Okay, am I in the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I gotta
you have to get your hips way higher to start.
And I have to am I on the ground? I'm not on the ground,
but your hips are so much higher than mine.
That's
which
crazy.
Makes sense because of your thigh bone.
Yes, it's like where else? You can't go anywhere else. And I don't have a lot of length to distribute it. So you know how I've been trying to lower from pinchin to baby crow. I'm curious if it's even possible because I don't know. We'll see maybe one day.
Yeah, and I mean, we show you examples of us so that you guys can know also it doesn't have to look a certain way, and you will experience poses probably very differently from anybody that you're also doing yoga with. So,
and if you look around and you see someone who's going through some pose or transition with ease, be happy for them, celebrate them. Also, don't let that take away from, or just know that whether it's easy or hard for you, there will always be poses that come more naturally for some people than others, and I guarantee you there's poses you can do that are hard for the next person that you don't even think twice about. And that's for real. We're not going to say that all people start from the same baseline, but there's so many different poses and ways to work them that, again, you'll find the ones that it's why is that so hard for people? It's
that's hard.
Yeah, and then there's ones where you're how can you do that?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
My husband, was it the first class he ever went to? He came to Ashtanga. I was practicing, Emily was teaching, and we were working on pincha, and we both kind of got out of the corner of our eye. There he was.
Popped up in there in the middle of the room.
First time.
No wall.
No,
Just forearm balance.
Yeah.
which has taken both of us years.
And like comes and goes for me, but he just boop, popped right up. And
I took a picture. I was like, LaurEm, look, he's just a pincha, like no big deal.
Yeah, and later he was like, what? My neck was hurting, so I didn't want my head on the
He didn't
ground.
want to do a headstand.
We were doing headstand. He went into pincha instead and didn't even know that he was doing something that is really hard for a lot of people.
But he had the shoulder strength, and he may have had like the stiffness in his core too. He's less wobbly, where his body, he could just hold himself up, and
it was really funny.
I love those moments in yoga though, because it's, in a sense, like I said, it's not like we all start from the same baseline, but it's like the playing field really is kind of even in a way. If you have the eyes and observation of like, oh wow, amazing bodies, they're all different. And
which is so cool.
Yeah, and so some things you'll have to work really hard at that seem easy for someone else, but guess what? It's a good feeling when you work really hard for something that didn't come naturally, and you're thinking, man, I worked for that. And I know like all the little parts that have to happen, and I'm probably a better teacher of those kind of poses than the ones that come easily for me. So it's good too to talk to each other, and you'll learn like, oh, whoa.
I didn't even know that about
Can't
my
wait to see the video
about my
Baby
crow versus So
can we both fit in Baby Crow
I don't know.
in the video?
Let's
I don't know
try.
if we can fit into the screen because it's.
We have to start from further
We
back.
might have to. Oh, maybe you should go in front since I'm so high. Okay. Crawl in.
Crawl in. I'm in.
I'm in. I'm tipped up.
So much
I
higher.
don't have any idea. I'm sorry. All I know is I'm squeezing
That's amazing.
right here.
So go play.
Go play. Have fun. Go Crow.
Go crow.
Woo!
Caw.
Caw.